you. So yeah, one of the disadvantages of getting into virtual reality right now is you have to use a Windows PC to do any development. So my Mac is at home, but I miss it greatly. I'm here to talk to you guys about making VR magic with JavaScript. So how many people know JavaScript, just out of interest? Excellent. That is the most amount of hands I've gotten in a while. Usually there's like cursing and like sadness. So it's much better when people are happy. Yes. So yeah, how many people have tried VR before? Just like an raise of hands. Cool. For anybody who doesn't know what VR is, you can try it later. Basically, put on a headset. It'll show you a screen. You can see that you are somewhere else, basically, that's coded. And yeah, I run a site called DevDiner, and the main thing that I do with DevDiner is I try to help developers get into emerging tech. So I try to guide people along, connect them with the right people if they're trying to do something that only a few people have tried before. And I have a weekly newsletter and stuff, which I'll show at the end. But I'm here to help. So come chat to me about VR, AR, wearables, smartwatches, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, robotics, any of those sort of things. I would really love to chat to you guys and see what you're up to. If you've got projects that you're trying to get people to see, if you've done something really cool in any of those areas, come see me, because I'd love to try and get your work out to the world a bit more and write an article about you and try and, get people to see the stuff that you're doing. Cool. And yes, if you aren't doing it yet, you should start getting into emerging tech because it's fun. But I think this crowd, most of you have started getting into emerging tech by this point. All right, so where are we at right now in VR? Well, the first half of 2016 alone saw $1.3 billion invested in VR, which is a lot of money, and it's kind of kept going. So it's good signs, generally. I like it because you can create entire worlds from your imagination. So you think up something, and you can literally, as long as you can code it up or find somebody who can, you can put people into that exact scenario. Oh, and in this case, using JavaScript, which is fun. Okay, why is WebVR wonderful? Well, you can use all of the web development skills that web developers already have. So if you are a web developer and you've been a bit kind of iffy about whether you should get into VR because you didn't want to learn Unity or you didn't want to learn game engines, you can actually do this with what you've already got. If you're not great at JavaScript, if you weren't one of the people who put your hands up, that doesn't matter. A lot of the stuff that I'm going to show for the basics of kind of making a scene, you can do that really easily without needing JavaScript's knowledge. And I'll show a bit of why later. One of the great things about the web is that you don't have to install an app. So if you make something, it can be a really temporary thing. Say BuzzConf later this year has a WebVR thing that they just put together, right? You can share it with everybody without needing to kind of go, hey, go onto the App Store and download it on here. You literally can just give people a URL, which I'll be giving you guys later on. So if you get your phones ready about kind of 10 minutes in, you'll be able to go on to the stuff I'm making. There's also no App Store ecosystem drama. So you don't have to go, oh, I have to do it this way to please Apple, or I have to do it this way to please Google, or I have to do it this way to please Oculus or Samsung. There are a lot of app stores now. So if you just make it for the web, then it's sorted and you just bypass all of that. And being able to distribute your content directly to the people you're making it for is actually incredibly valuable because there's no limitations. So you don't have to be censored in what you make as well. If it's something which could be politically sensitive or something where you think so-and-so company won't actually want me to give this out to people, the web is perfect for that sort of thing. It also means you've got access to a much wider audience. So the stuff I'm going to show you can work on the Vive, it can work on the Oculus Rift, it can work on Google Cardboard. It can even work with people who just have smartphones out and they can kind of just move the smartphone around and look. So it literally works with most people who are out there. You don't have to code it for each individual thing for it to work, which is wonderful as well. There are a bunch of ways you can get into it. You can try doing WebGL coding from scratch. How many people know WebGL and code that day to day? Yes, one hand. Good luck. Don't do it that way. If you value your time in life, it's not fun. You could do some 3JS. Has anybody worked with 3JS before for like 3D visualizations? So it's a way of kind of making 3D stuff in JavaScript. It is quite good, but there is an easier way now. So a lot of what I'm showing you actually is built off that initial kind of concept of you have 3D, and the device orientation event could kind of sense where your phone is tilted. And so they kind of mimicked VR, where they could see when you tilt your phone. But yeah, there is an easy way, and that's A-Frame, which is my favorite. Has anybody heard of A-Frame so far? A few. Excellent. A-Frame is great because you can do all this sort of thing, but with HTML style markup. So you just say a-circle in a tag, like HTML, and you've got a circle, or a sphere, or a cube. And you don't have to work out all the rest of the bits and pieces. It just works. There's also Primrose. This is a lesser known one, but it's actually really good to look into if you're wanting to do collaborative web apps. So if you want to make, say, an online board meeting where people can go onto a URL and all have a chat and you can hear their microphones and that sort of thing, Primrose is great. It's also fun if you want to do some live coding. So one of his examples, he's got a virtual JavaScript code editor inside VR. And so you could theoretically code in JavaScript the world around you while you're in VR. So you can kind of create cubes and stuff, and they start appearing around you in like real time. That's a lot of fun. There's also React VR, which is Facebook and Oculus's newer approach. It's still relatively new, but they officially released it last week. It's been around for about half a year before that. It's basically, if you know React, the JavaScript framework that Facebook use, it's getting quite big, and a lot of our developers out there are using it. It's their same team have kind of expanded a bit more and have tried to use the same concepts for VR. Because it's really new, I still recommend people try A-Frame first because there's a lot more documentation out there. There's a much bigger community around it. So if you get stuck with A-Frame, you can just literally go onto a Slack channel somewhere, be like, hey, why isn't this working? And somebody will usually help you pretty quickly. React is a bit harder to find people who know exactly how that works. Cool. So a lot of you are like, I don't believe you. This is stupid. Why would I want to do this? There's got to be something that isn't good about WebVR. Why would I not want to do it? And yeah, desktop browsers is still a little bit buggy with WebVR, so this won't work with your current desktop browser. It works with Firefox Nightly, and it works with a special version of Chrome, a special version of Chromium, which is built by one guy at the Google Chrome team who has this all on himself to try and keep it going. But it's getting closer. Firefox, I think, are hoping to get this into the main Firefox later this year. And Chrome, who knows, but I think they're also aiming to try and get there around the same time as Firefox, just with much less manpower. Things are still evolving and changing. The one area where it is actually pretty well supported is on mobile phones. So most smartphone browsers will support the basics, at the very least, because it is largely JavaScript based. The reason it's not so good with desktop is because you have to work with an Oculus Rift headset or a Vive headset, and there's a bit more involved in doing that. Browsers can't do everything that a fully fledged VR application can do. So if you've got some really complicated VR setups with like lighting and a lot of elements in there and stuff, there is a lot more that an actual fully kind of application built in a game engine can do that JavaScript eventually might get to, but we're not there yet. But you can do a lot of basic stuff with JavaScript. So the first example is a meetup visualizer that I put together. So this is a simple prototype I put together, which hooks into the Meetup API. And so it can read in the information about a meetup and generate a scene. It's a really basic scene. I wanted to get further with it, but I haven't yet. And so there are a bunch of chairs, and the chairs represent the places that were available in the meetup. So there are however many chairs that are out there, RSVP spots. And the filled in chairs are the ones that were taken, so that each one of those chairs that's filled in represents one of you guys if you actually RSVP'd. And at the back is a bunch of chairs of more people who could have come if they wanted to. And so theoretically, I can walk around in here and just see this, but it's very hard to do with one hand. I wanted to expand it a bit more so that there was like a window outside with like a waiting list and a bunch of people waiting outside if it was really full, but not important. And so this is another reason why I think doing it on the web is kind of cool, is that you can hook into web APIs where you can kind of pull in existing data from different places and use it in ways which the Meetup team weren't expecting you to use it. Another example is a WebVR creation I built, which works sometimes, and it basically is trying to generate a scene based on a web page. So it reads in the colors of the web page and the images in the web page and tries to make a scene with a castle and colors it based on whatever the most common colors are in the web page. It's really, really simple and basic and takes a bit of time sometimes because it's reliant on reading an entire web page and spitting it out. So I'm going to let that load, and I'm going to continue on to the next one, which loads faster. and then go from there. But the gist here was that you can pretty much pass in a URL, and depending on how secure the website is, read it in and kind of get it to do stuff. We'll go back to that. And then, as another way of showing the idea of using web APIs and existing data to generate things kind of dynamically, I put in a visualization that works off NASA data of asteroids and how close they are to the Earth, to try and visualize that in a bit more of a cool way. So this one, which hopefully will work a lot better, shows asteroids that are kind of just floating around you. I'm just going to give up on that one for now. There are the asteroids. And I got trying to make this more interesting so you can blow up the asteroids. I haven't quite gotten it to the point where, you can see the names of the asteroids for long enough. So it does highlight and show you what the asteroid name is. But this is different every time. So each day it pulls in new NASA data. And so the red asteroids are the potentially dangerous asteroids that are coming close to Earth. And the sizes of the asteroids are all dependent on how big the asteroid is in the NASA database. So it was kind of a simple visualization I was trying to show. Theoretically, asteroids aren't floating around us, but they're closer if they're coming closer to Earth and further away if they're a bit further away from Earth and they're passing by. But I evolved that slightly because I'm trying to use this for an online course that I'm going to be building to teach people how to do WebVR and A-frame stuff. So theoretically, if you want to learn at some point, that will be available in an online course to teach people how to do this. I evolved it into this version. I probably shouldn't be looking straight ahead, where I instead tried to get the asteroids kind of coming towards you, so it was a bit more of a game, because people get really dizzy if you spin things around them in VR. It actually isn't the best idea. So this instead kind of has things coming towards you, and you kind of have to try and shoot the asteroids. Same idea, but a little bit different. So they come slightly closer towards you if they're coming closer to Earth, and yeah, that sort of thing. Same idea, just adjusted slightly. And then I went a bit further, and this is where the main kind of example in my online course is going to be, is I decided it would be more fun if I make a replica of the solar system in VR, because I thought it would be kind of fun and interesting. Then I realized the solar system is really big. And so it doesn't look that exciting in reality because things are so spread apart. And I could spend an eternity kind of going through and trying to reach each kind of planet. But instead, I built in a way to kind of move everything closer together for presentation purposes. So let's see if this works. So that'll send... Okay, so that's at like super speed, which is probably a bit too fast for what we want right now. Let's go that one. Does that... No, that's not it. That one. That's a bit slower. So you can see the planets are a little bit more kind of closer. They can kind of go in front of each other and stuff. You might be able to spot Earth. I should probably slow it down a bit more. Let's see. That should be slower. So, if we wander around the sun, maybe we'll just go the other way rather than fighting the planets. You'll eventually spot Earth is there. And the fun thing is that it all works with JavaScript. So theoretically, when I put this online, there it is, very briefly, with its moon spinning around it too, is that because it's all done with JavaScript and stuff, you could theoretically open up your phone and see it. That's not the demo I'm going to show you guys on your phone, because I have a more fun one. I was thinking one day about the game Tapper. How many people played Tapper in the old days? Yeah. And I wanted to make that into VR. But it's a bit of a difficult game to put into VR because there's a lot of movement and jumping around, and I thought that would be kind of crazy to try and do in VR. So I made a different version that was kind of inspired by Tapper, but is going to be a bit different. If you'll go to that URL, it's spacebrister.herokuapp.com, and I will also go there because I will need to be there for this to work. But I'll let it load in the background. So you can go to it on your phone. And it's built with A-frame, but there's a specific module that's been created. It's still kind of early days, so there are bugs with it and such still. But it lets you make a multiplayer WebVR application really, really easily. So everybody can go in and join it. And it's called Space Barista because you are a space barista. And so you make coffee for the resident aliens who come by. It's a very simple demo at the moment, but it's the one that I'm going to be showing on the Vive later. And so later on, if you guys want to try it properly on the Vive, you can. And you'll see it properly, but I'm just going to show the general gist. With Space Barista, you use a Vive. So in there is the Vive where you have two controllers, and you can kind of walk around the space, and you can kind of make coffees in a really simple coffee machine. In this case, I'm getting a blank screen, which is lame. Let's try again. Some people are seeing stuff already. So if you are seeing it, oh, there we go. I can see a bit more. So now there'll be coffee cups around. If you are, oh, there's a whole bunch of aliens now. You guys are all just hanging out. If you look at the different bowls, it'll like take you to that space. So because you don't have a keyboard or mouse, I've kind of got that at the moment. Theoretically, when you get to this point here, the plan was that I'd have a bunch of buttons on the table. They're not there yet. And you'll be able to kind of say what sort of coffee you want and challenge the person behind the counter to try and press the right combination of buttons to make you coffee. And so if you see back here, I have a continuously flowing coffee machine. And you would theoretically grab a cup, put it under the coffee machine, and life would be good. So while you guys are all just hanging out and seeing each other, I'll show you a video of what it looks like for those who won't get a chance to see it in action. But you really should come try it because you can actually try picking up the cup and doing stuff yourself. But that's sort of what it looks like. So you can kind of grab a cup, put it under there to fill it up, and then you can even drink some yourself if you'd like. That wouldn't count as a point. I think that should be negative. But theoretically, yeah, it kind of just picks up where people are. And most of this was built in a hackathon over a weekend. So it doesn't take tons of time to kind of build this because somebody's already gone out and made all the multiplayer stuff for you. But that's where it started. Over time, that's going to end up in an online course as well, explaining all of this when it's a bit more stable. But if you're looking to do anything similar, it's not too difficult. And finally, if you love all this sort of stuff, but you're finding it hard to keep up with everything, that tends to be why people come to these sort of events. I do have that aforementioned newsletter. I also have a Twitter if you hate email, which can kind of serve both purposes. It's at devdiner.com/newsletter. And what it is basically this sort of thing, but from a whole bunch of people. So I kind of scour the net every week, looking for all of the news links about what's happened in emerging tech. So all the virtual reality, augmented reality, artificial intelligence, robotics, Internet of Things. I didn't think it would evolve as fast as it did when I first decided this newsletter was a good idea. But they end up being pretty long newsletters, but really quick one-liners of kind of what's happened, just in a summary of everywhere. So head to there. Or if you don't like email and newsletters, the @devdiner Twitter generally has most of the links that I post up in the newsletter. Or at that Patrick guy if you want to chat to me or you've got questions on all of this stuff, because I am here to help. And also, if you don't want to go over Twitter or you don't use Twitter or you don't want to sign up to a newsletter, you can send me questions over here as well. If you're trying to use A-Frame or if you've got anything else that you're doing with emerging tech and you can't find the answers to something and you just need help and you don't know where else to go, feel free to send me an email and be like, hey, I don't know if you know anything about this, but I can't work this out, and I'll try and get you help if I can find it. Sometimes I know people who know people and just magic happens. Other times I'll be like, I don't know. But yeah, so send me questions. I'm here to help. And otherwise, thanks for listening, guys.